I don't know exactly what would happen if I wasn't here stewarding this. You're talking about dumpster upon dumpster. I mean, I can't even imagine. It's a lot of stuff. I think it's safe to say that most of the signs you see here, if we hadn't saved it, would have ended up in the garbage. No, there has never been a sign museum in New York before. Signs are big and they're heavy and they require maintenance from people that know a lot about them. It's not easy to get a project like this off the ground. My name's David Barnett. I'm the co-founder and creative director of Noble Signs, and I am the person behind the New York Sign Museum. So right now the museum is in our workshop. I'd say we have over 50 full-size storefront signs and then hundreds of small signs and ephemera. There's so much to learn from looking at old New York signage. It's focused on getting your attention quickly. People come here and they're able to see this amazing collection, right? But they're also able to see an actual functioning sign shop where the same types of signs that are on the walls are being made. To me, nothing defines my sense of place more than the storefronts and signs if I'm in a city. I spent a lot of time growing up at my grandma's house in Middle Village, Queens. Her daily routine was walking down Metropolitan Avenue, going to the bakery, the butcher shop, the grocery store. I have pretty strong memories of the signs. I felt really comfortable in that world, and I think I loved spending time with my grandma, and a big part of it was just like loving that neighborhood feel of the part of Queens where she lived.
This has been
Chris's art project.
paint tower that's been growing from basically doing this and stuff. It's gone for a kind of neo-Gothic cathedral thing over time.
We made our first sign about 15 years ago, so I was like in my early 20s. I was working in the music industry, doing graphic design, illustration. A friend of ours, he asked me to do the branding and the graphics in a new bar that was opening, and asked my friend Mac, who was a buddy of mine from college, to build a sign. He hit me up and said, hey, like, let's just do this collaboratively. His idea, like, we should try to paint it. You know, this was before social media. There was still a little more mystery about some of these things, right? You couldn't just like go online and find videos of people painting signs. We were really just like digging for old books and stuff like that. We tried to teach ourselves the art of sign making and sign painting, but those are obviously not skills that you learn overnight. There's generations of knowledge that went into making the amazing signs that are, I think, New York City classics. And that's really where the museum project began, which was like, well, if we're gonna try to make signs that look like the old signs, like the best way to do it is to get up close and study them. And that's why we started saving signs in the first place. Our collection already exceeds the wall space that we have here. Taking down signs can be really hard. You know, finding a way to transport it and to store it and to refurbish it or whatever it is. All that said, there's something really special about keeping something meaningful in a place where everybody can continue to enjoy it. The first sign that I saved was from my deli in Crown Heights, where I lived for about 10 years. I'd been talking to them and saying, just keep the signs, like don't change the signs, because you can fix them up, but like this, you know, I could sense that they were kind of thinking about maybe a facelift or something like that. They ended up moving next door, and then a Dunkin' Donuts took over the corner location. They remembered me, and I stopped by and they were like, take any sign that you want, like whatever you want, take the signs. I ended up with a very large light box sign that became like the first piece in what ultimately became the museum collection. To be honest, usually when we find out about a sign, the business is already closed. Smith Bar was an iconic Times Square, watering hole, dive. Been there since, I believe, the 1960s. It went through several owners over the years, but it always maintained this everyman kind of quality. I think it represented something to a lot of people about like what Times Square used to be. Everything changed around it, and it somehow managed to stay the same, which I think obviously is why it was so hard for people to see it close. There's lessons that we had taken, like looking at Smith's on signs that we've made, and I said, oh, look at how they did it on the Smith's Bar sign, well before we knew that we were gonna end up, having the signs here. The channels, we call them cans. They're these big metal stainless steel letters that form like the outline of a letter that the neon tubing goes in as kind of like a skeleton, and then the can holds the neon. Smith's is a great example of this type of sign, arguably one of, if not the most classic style of New York City sign. We were saving signs kind of casually, starting in maybe 2015 or 2016 when I saved that first bodega sign. So here and there we were taking signs back to our shop and not really sure what we were doing with them. We moved to this space that we're in now in 2019, and having more space obviously allowed us to take in more old signs. We started kind of ramping that up, and then COVID hit. And then all of a sudden it went from being like, oh, this is a cool thing that we can do, to it being like, this is a crisis level thing where there's like a bleeding of all of these businesses closing. That's when I think it started to feel more like a mission. The purpose of us saving the signs from the beginning had been to educate ourselves and to hopefully, just preserve something. We need to save these signs so that people can learn from them in the future. There's so many stories and so much knowledge hidden in these signs, whether you're wanting to learn about the vernacular letter forms and motifs that you see throughout classic New York City signage, or you're just a nostalgia seeker, someone looking to learn about what New York City was like in the 20th century. These signs are coming down. They're coming down really fast, and it's painful. It's like, for me personally, it became something that was like keeping me up at night. You're like walking down that block that you've walked down 100 times, and then suddenly it like hits you like a sucker punch, where you're just like, wait, where'd that sign go? Like, what happened? Being a sign company, we are better positioned to save these signs than almost anybody, and let's just figure out the rest later. The signs represent the character of the businesses and the people who ran them. If we can make a few signs that are our homage to the classic New York City style, then at least we'll be doing some little thing that feels like it's making a small difference against these really massive forces of change that you feel powerless to fight against. Even when we started in the early 2010s, the writing was on the wall that things were changing in a way that was moving away from the personality and like the uniqueness. We can keep this art form alive and try to prevent its extinction.